Political Power Panel, GOP strategist and Compass Strategy President CEO Luke Ball, as well as former chief of staff for the White House press office and advisor to the press secretary under Biden, Yemisi Egbewali. Thank you both for being here. Let's start with the Middle East and its potential impacts here at home. The Iran war, it does remain unpopular among Americans. There's a new poll from Marquette University Law, a school that found 88% of Americans say that the U.S. has failed to achieve its goals, and 3 in 4 Americans say that it's not been worth the cost. And the costs have been plentiful, from loss of life to tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money being spent on this war, not to mention the pricing pressures that we've seen at the pump and beyond. Yemisi, let me start with you. What's the play for Democrats, not only who are saying that Republicans are in charge of why things are a mess here, but what they potentially could do if they get voted into office come November?
Well, I think for Democrats right now, Trump is handing them a playbook when it comes to the war. He keeps insisting, and I think we've heard this song before, that negotiations are close, it's coming to a close. But the problem is Republicans have to then leave Washington and go to their districts and states and sell this. And that's something that Democrats don't have to do. They do not have to sell or reason why America has long sustained involvement right now with Iran, and also why the Strait of Hormuz, which we know is a direct impact on the prices we're seeing domestically, is still not open. That is the argument that Republicans have to make, so Democrats should just focus on the domestic issues that affect the day-to-day lives of their constituents.
Look, let me ask you this. Arguably, the biggest test, particularly for progressive Democrats, comes this Tuesday, when we're going to see socialist candidate Francesca Hong look to win the party's nomination for Wisconsin governor. Republicans are reportedly planning to frame their midterm messaging around the idea that Democrats are moving more and more toward this communism or socialism. And a strategy former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said recently might work. Take a listen.
And the real fight will be how do we make sure that people who voted for Haley feel comfortable voting for Abdul El Sayed, and how do we get independents to feel comfortable? And you can see that it's not just about Michigan, but the Republican messaging is communist, socialist. It's going to be a very effective attack.
On the flip side here, Luke, how can Republicans maximize and take control of this narrative, especially in the fight for independent voters?
Hillary Clinton didn't just suggest going to battle with Democrat socialists. She suggested conformity to their policies. How is it tolerable to the centrist or legacy Democrats heading into November that these Democrats will be at the top of the ticket, which they now are? They are winning races across the country. It's not down ballot like mosquito control boards or dog catcher. These are gubernatorial races. They're Senate races, and the party is going along with it. A poll last week found that 33% of Democrats now identify as Democrat socialist, and 66% of them are fine with socialism in general. The biggest problem the Democrats have is that they have put up all the resistance of a screen door in a hurricane to the DSA policies. The DSA has a platform. They very publicly released it a few weeks ago. But if you go look on the Democrats' official website for their 2026 midterm strategy, the only thing you're going to find is a 94-page document from Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign, which was a failure, obviously, and therefore they have nothing to even counteract the DSA argument in their own party.
Yemisi, given how big this race could be and what it could mean as another indicator for the party come November, it's interesting. Despite her lead in the poll, Francesca Hong hasn't been endorsed by any high-profile progressive as of yet. Not kind of what we saw with El Sayed, right, in Michigan. Yet she has been, obviously leading the polls there. Hong is still seen as this kind of polarizing candidate, not just for her push for far-left policies like Medicare for all, abolishing ICE, but even her statements, calling for the U.S. to cancel Thanksgiving. That's something she's been trying to walk back over the last week or two. She was also, again, unable to get these endorsements from the likes of Senator Bernie Sanders, AOC, who says that, he is more focused on, the congressional races. Should Hong get the nomination, and can she win the governorship given some of her controversial stances and the lack of those high-profile endorsements?
No, it would be incredibly difficult for her to win Wisconsin, which is a true swing state. She's not a serious person, and there are serious Democrats that are running in this primary, like David Crowley, and we shouldn't have a child try to run the state of Wisconsin, which is important beyond the midterms to 2028.
Let's go to Michigan, right, where the Senate race between progressive Democrat Abdul El-Sayed, you got Republican Mike Rogers, that is heating up. Rogers making a play for Democrats who voted for moderate Haley Stevens, saying this.
If you're among the majority of Democratic voters that woke up on Wednesday feeling, well, hopeless, because the person who won does not represent your values, well, just know there is still hope. To the vast majority of people across Michigan who do not want to throw their support behind a campaign filled with anger, divisiveness, calls for violence, and the views that are out of touch with your values, well, you have a home with us.
Luke, do you think this is a pitch that's enough to take over El-Sayed, who has a sizable lead on Rogers, according to our DDHQ polling?
I think it is a great strategy because I think a lot of independents who really don't identify with Republicans or Democrats are going to objectively look at who has the better policy solutions and also the most realistic policy solutions. I think they will pick Rogers over El-Sayed because you can be doggone sure that the Republicans in the Rogers camp are going to be airing out all of El-Sayed's dirty laundry over the last few years that he has said, the radical things that he has said, that he's tried to step away from. Even though he'll say that he's not a Democrat socialist, he's been at least 5 or 6 fundraisers, raised thousands of dollars for him, been photographed behind their booths with a capitalist individual or figure being choked out by the DSA fist. And that's all going to be aired out in front of the voters in his state. So you can be confident that this message was planned. It was ready to be deployed as soon as El-Sayed won his primary election. And you will see this all the way through November.
In terms of his message, El-Sayed, in a recent interview this morning, detailed what he would do if he were to win the Senate in Michigan if elected. Take a listen to what he said.
When I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, the first thing we need to do is start holding the Trump administration accountable. You know, when we win, God willing, I will take my seat as a member of a Senate majority. That gives us subpoena power to be able to investigate all of the ways that this administration has used their power for their gain and enrichment and against ours.
Yamisi, is that what voters want to hear? Is this the right pitch to voters there in Michigan?
No, he has a little bit of an uphill battle here. I think that he needs to make, to echo Hillary Clinton, he needs to make voters who were not comfortable with him feel heard. Yeah. And that is rural, working class voters, and it's also black voters. And those are not the issues that are at the forefront of them. It's the focus on the economy and affordability. And if he would like to win too, he needs to denounce Hassan Piker. His close association with him is a drag. It's an anchor on his campaign. I think there are clear steps that he needs to take before we can talk about him winning any Senate seat.
On the other side of the aisle, we know the Republicans are hosting the party's first midterm convention next month. And according to an Axios report, the party is planning this socialism telethon targeting socialism and progressives, the movement within the Democratic Party. Luke, is attacking Democrats enough to win when voters are clearly looking for change, especially on affordability? And many Republicans criticize Democrats for doing this in 2024. And clearly we know that didn't help them.
Well, as part of a holistic midterm strategy, of course, you have to attack the other side, and the most radical fringe on the Democrat side is trending towards socialism. Those stats that I just showed you are not a downtick in any support. They are an uptick by any stretch of the imagination and measurement. So you're going to see them attacking the radical socialist policies, which have gained a foothold in the left. You will also see a touting of President Trump's wins, his economic achievements as he's had over the past couple of years. There are some adjustments that need to be made. You led into the segment with the Iran war, something that I have been a vocal critic of. I think that we need to end the Iran war. We need to ramp it down because it's not a winning midterm strategy. And so as we head into that convention, which I think you'll see Democrats mirror, if not this cycle, then very soon, it's going to be a compare and contrast, but also a touting of the president's economic successes over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it seems very clear that both Democrats and Republicans have an uphill battle between now and November to really get those voters, especially those critical independent voters. Luke Ball, Yamisi Egbewali, really appreciate both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, and don't miss this.